Really happy to have you here with us as we're taking two questions. One about the role of globalization and sustainability, big topic, and the other one about how do you actually create, how do you create an appropriate local context, maybe without being in China, or how do you understand the context of China for being outside of China? I answered both of those. I've done my best, but if you have a specific application or tactic that you would like to know, please ask us down below in the questions or send us an email directly. We're so happy to have you here, and remember, please like, share, and provide comments. Thank you very much, and without further ado, here's the first question.
Chris Press asks, I'm curious how you think the growth of free trade agreements has impacted sustainability both regionally and globally. Has it helped or hurt? Is it teaching best practices or forcing production to lowest cost countries?
Chris, thank you very much for your question. It's a big one, so we're actually going to separate into two parts. So starting off, globalization overall, I believe, presents both good and, so it's challenging as well as a solution provider to sustainability challenges. If you're talking environmental, the easiest one to say is the biggest challenge that we should overcome is going to be, if you're worried about the environmental side, probably the energy and energy emissions related to the shipment of goods around the world. I would also argue that as globalization has taken hold and consumer patterns have grown, partly because the cost of products is cheaper than it would be if you were just making it locally, that this also presents a material challenge because now we're extracting more raw materials, we're shipping those around the world. So there's a lot of moving parts in here that I think are challenging. So if you're looking at transportation and extraction, those are certainly two issues that you can look at. Now you mentioned low-cost labor, and I'm going to tie that to child labor just very quickly, because this is where globalization could be a challenge but also a solution. Because one of the real benefits from a sustainability standpoint, if you look at the social side, is that it does help areas of the world come up economically, that without these jobs being moved around, they would find it tough to find great jobs, but you can bring this to them. So you bring them the lower stuff to begin with, but over time, as we've seen in China the last 20 years, they've gone from being willing to work on any factory floor, no matter what the conditions are, for a low wage, to now being very challenging to keep anyone on the factory floor for very long because they have so many other options. The middle class is growing largely off this back of manufacturing, and now it's getting very selective. So, but there's a balance somewhere, and I won't say that every country gets it done right, but I guess the core answer to your question is that, the challenge, the positive externalities of globalization really about economic development, consumers' affordability, specialization of resources, things along those lines. And these are all good, and that's what we want to keep. It's the negative stuff that we want to either reduce or remove completely, and this is the challenges. And if I were to kind of directly answer your question, if I was in manufacturing, I'd be most worried about energy. How much am I using to ship my stuff around the world? The quality of labor that I'm using, is it safe on my factory floors? Is my outsourced supply chain, are they employing children? Is it safe? What are we doing with materials and design and reusability materials? Is our loops circular, or are we just make waste? These are the big challenges. These are the big questions that I would be asking. But I would say overall, globalization has been a good thing for the social side of sustainability. Now for the second part of your question, which is?
Teaching best practices or forcing production to lower cost countries.
Now for the second part of your question, we ask about best practices. I actually would argue that it does. It takes time, but when I first arrived in China 15 years ago, and I started working within CSR and sustainability, it was the foreign firms at the time who were enforcing global standards upon all manufacturers. They looked at their business model at a global level, and then they looked to put in the best practices around the world. Now, that's not to say that it was done at best practice at all times, but what we've certainly seen is that a lot of governments look to those practices so they can help guide policy locally, but also as local competitors want to be able to compete in the global market, they have to come up. And how do they come up? Because the whole labor pool has been trained on these high standards in the foreign community, and they're the ones who typically jump out and then start their own businesses. So I actually would argue that from, be it philanthropy, volunteering, EHS, or the use of different biomimicry design techniques, what we see is the foreign firms, or the firms with a sustainability core, they will start that process. And if they do a great job, and if the market really takes it up, then very quickly, all their competitors will start to bring that up. So the tide really does tend to lift all boats. But depending upon what industry you're in, what geography you're in, and what issue you're trying to be the leader in, it may take time before the whole industry itself comes up. So really hope that answers your question. Again, it's very complicated. So if you have a specific industry or a specific issue that you'd like to focus on, please feel free to drop that into the comments below, or hit me up on Facebook through our normal channel. So thank you very much, and have a great week.
Ariel Muller asks, I would like to know what indicators of sustainable progress in China a local would watch versus someone outside the country. How do we contextualize real signals of progress without living in China and having on-the-ground insight?
All right, well, thank you very much for your question, Ariel. I know that you don't want to oversimplify China, but let's oversimplify China. Really quickly, I mean, if I'm looking in the global press about what's happening in China, you get two stories. One is that they invest into more clean tech than anywhere else in the world. Capacity is at an all-time high. Good, 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 good. And then you hear all the negative stuff related to what they do to their environment. I think this is why it's really important that you are in China. Because the reality is, after having been here for 15 years, all I really focus on is how much things have changed, and for the better. Yes, in a lot of areas of China, be it in the west of China, the east of China, north, wherever, every region has its challenges. But the one general thing that I take away from my time in China is that the intent to improve is always there. I rarely run into an individual who is actively looking to undermine some area of the environment, society, or the economy that has enough pull and power to do that. You may have individual actors, a single factory owner, or a local mayor who is making a short-term decision that isn't in the long-term sustainable interest. But if you look at China at the macro level, be it from what they just worked on in Beijing with the Lianghui, or you come down to the leading cities and you look at how urban plans are being done, the number of big piece of infrastructure being put in place, you really need to be in China to see that happen. One of the most interesting things that I always come back down to is air pollution. It's definitely something that everyone struggles with here. All the cities, you look at the map, they're all different shades of challenged. Only one city in 2014 had a green standard, and that was Hainan. But what I think most people fail to recognize is that all that data was provided by the government. And that allows the public to analyze what's happening. That allows business to create apps. That allows business to bring in solutions, because they're actively trying to hold cities, provinces, and the country accountable at the end of the day. They're now looking at the macro level about how they can work with manufacturers. They're starting to ban certain emissions, ban certain things, move people out of the cities. So the changes are coming. And I think, if you're just reading that China has crazy bad air pollution against China has more wind power investment than anywhere else in the world, you can't really do anything with that. And that's why I think at the end of the day, to have the appropriate context, to put China into context, you need to be here. And then the last thing I'll say about this is probably the one bridge that I try to cross more and more as I work with my firms. I look at a lot of the strategies that I know that you guys are working on and the clients who you work with, same for us. They come in with their 7 pillars of sustainable X. And the reality is that because they've been formulated in New York, London, San Francisco, Geneva, Berlin, somewhere that doesn't share the same challenges as our region does, they seem to be misaligned. And so a lot of times what I end up doing with the local leadership or regional leadership is helping them to then filter that context back up. And again, that's only made possible by the fact that the people that we're working with here at the country and regional level, they understand the issues at the country and regional level. They're not trying to change global goals. So it actually goes both ways. The global goals don't filter down this way, and these don't filter 100% up. You have to find the happy medium. And the only way that you're really going to get that is through having the local context, through the local experience. So that's really the answer to my question. And I guess, if you're going to tell me, well, I'm based in Singapore, so then how do I do it? You have to find local assets who do have the local context, be it through your staff or through your network. It won't be a perfect filter. It won't give you everything at the level that you would have if you'd lived here for 3, 5, 10, 20 years, but it will help you to better understand the actual context, just talking to the people on the ground, because that's so important. There's so many missed opportunities by those who think they've read the New York Times articles about China and therefore they can align to that. The reality is very different here, and I'm really thankful for your question because it gives me an opportunity to kind of get that off my chest. So thank you very much, Ariel, for your question. I hope you have a great week. All right, so Chris, Ariel, thank you very much for your questions, and for anyone else who's asked us questions, we're doing these every week, so we'll definitely get to your question. If you enjoyed this, please like and share it with your friends, family, coworkers, industry, LinkedIn groups, whoever you can think to share this with, if you'll find this valuable, only if you find it valuable. And second, if you have a question, please send it to us either down below with the hashtag AskTheCollective or send over email. Your questions really are what feed us and this series. And I think you can tell more and more as we get these questions, get more tactical, get more interesting. And we really hope that it's a question that, if answered, will help you on a daily basis, be it formulate a strategy, come up with a new product, or just feel better about the world. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a great week.